Alrighty, in this video what we're going to do is we are going to get Photon installed and configured in such a way that we can deploy it using TeamCity. So what we're going to have to do is jump back over into my virtual machine to my production quote-unquote environment, and I'm going to fire up my browser and I'm going to go to exit. I'm just going to type in exit games in Google, go to the first result. And then I'm going to switch here from real-time down to Photon server, hit learn more, go to developer, download SDKs, and then I'm going to have to sign in. Hopefully that's my password, and it is my password. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull down the 3422 exe, self-extracting 7-zip archive, and it's going to download. So again, what we need to do here is we need to make it so that TeamCity will invoke the deploy Photon task, which is going to require that we specify a env variable as well as a Photon deploy folder variable. And we'll specify both of those inside of TeamCity because those are environment specific variables. And that'll just simply be wherever we dump Photon into. So I'm going to click on the self-extracting archive, and I'm going to extract it. Let's just go ahead and extract it to C. Make a new folder called software. Make a new folder called Photon -3422. And then I'm just going to hit OK, and then I'm going to hit extract. And that pretty much installs Photon. So now what we have to do is we have to create the folders that our build artifacts are going to be put into, and then we have to configure Photon to launch our applications, and all will be good. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to install Photon as a service on this computer, not something that we would start application. There's a lot of stuff I have to close. Not something that we would start as an application as we do in development, but something that we simply have automatically running when the computer starts. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. I'm just going to get some of these windows out of the way because they're kind of bugging me. Okay, so I'm going to open up my File Explorer, jump into Computer, C. I'm going to go ahead and make a favorite links to software. And then I'm going to go into Photon. And the folder I really care about is the deploy folder. I'm going to do just like what I did before on my development machine. I'm going to delete all of these. Oops, that's the opposite of what I wanted to do. I'm going to delete all of these deploy folders that I don't need. So remember, the deploy folder is the folder that contains the actual Photon application, and it's organized by operating system type, whether that be a 64-bit or 32-bit operating system, and whether it be XP or later. Now we're going to go into binwin64, and I'm just going to double-click Service Install. And it's going to say you don't have application because you're not an administrator. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to right-click Service Install and say Run as Administrator. And Service installed. For the Photon service instance name equals default. And I can verify that by coming over here into my services, and I can click on Photon, and we see Photon server default set to a startup type of automatic. Now, automatic means it'll start when the computer starts, but we haven't yet quite configured Photon to do what we want it to, so I'm not going to start it up yet, because that'll be kind of pointless. So, what we need to do is we need to open up the Photon control.exe.config. We're just going to open this up in Notepad. And then we're going to configure it in the same way that we configured our local development configuration. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and download a text editor real fast. I'm going to go ahead and grab Sublime. I don't want to. So I'm going to jump over, search Google for Sublime. Grab Sublime Text. We're going to grab version 2 because that's the one I have licensed. And we're just going to open it. hit run, hit install, next. I'm going to add an Explorer context window. Next, install. Just because we might have a variety of text files that we might be editing on the server, so it's always a good idea to get a nice text editor installed. So now we can open this with Sublime Text 2. And it won't give us XML syntax highlighting right off the bat, but what we can do is we can hit Control-Shift-P and type in XML, and it'll give us syntax highlighting. And I really don't like that color scheme, so I'm going to go down to my my preferences color scheme, and I'm pretty sure the one that I like is Twilight, and it is. Okay, so this is photoncontrol.exe.config, which is actually the wrong file. People who were paying close attention might have noticed that I opened the wrong one. The one we want is photonserver.config, I believe. Indeed, this is the one we want. So we're going to pretty much do exactly what we did before with our other installation. I'm going to comment out our TCP listeners. I'm going to comment out our policy file listeners. I'm going to leave WebSocket listeners in here because we might be using that in the future. And then I'm going to go ahead and use the Photon host runtime. That's all good. Now for my applications, I'm going to comment out all of the existing applications. And I'm basically just going to configure it in the exact same way that our development machine was configured. Which, if you recall, if I go ahead and open up Explorer, pop over to software, go down to Photon 3422, go to deploy bin win64, jump in Photon server.config, and we see this configuration file. And basically we're going to be doing the same things. So we're going to be setting up these two applications with the proper watch files, the proper types, the proper exclude flags, and the force auto restart. So let's go ahead and get these set up. I'm coming back down to my VM. I'm going to create an application node. I'm going to give it a name. Now the names are going to be important because the name determines how we're going to reference it within our code. So buzz MMO master, and then we'll have a base directory of buzz mmo.server.master. We'll have an assembly of buzz mmo.server.master. We will have a type of buzz mmo.server.master.application. Of course, this has to be the proper casing. Then we're going to have a watch files, and that is going to equal DLL and config. And we're going to have exclude files equal to log for net.config. And we're going to have force auto restart set to true. Then I'm going to go ahead and create another application element, and I'm going to say name equals buzz MMO region. Base directory equals buzz mmo.server.region. Type equals buzz mmo.server.region.application. Watch files equals DLL and config. Exclude files equals log for net.config. And force auto restart equals true. Okay, the last thing we need to do is change our default application, and I'm going to change the default application to buzz MMO master. All right, so yeah, that's pretty much the entire configuration that we need. Now we have to go ahead and create the directory structure, but if we tried to start Photon right now, it would fail. It wouldn't start up. And the reason is we haven't actually populated these folders or these directories with the contents of our build. So let's jump back into our deploy folder, and I'm going to create a new folder inside of it called buzz mmo.server.master. Then I'm going to create another new folder called buzz mmo.server.region. Inside of that's not heist, that's sever, not server. Inside of server.master, I'm going to create a new folder called bin. Inside of server.region, I'm going to create a new folder called bin. bin. And that's really it as far as getting Photon all ready to go to run our applications. So let's go ahead and copy this path, and we're going to use this path in TeamCity to configure a new build configuration that will deploy the Photon web server or Photon applications. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to jump into TeamCity here, and you see right now we're looking at our projects window. I want to jump over to administration, and then I want to open up this project by clicking on the project. Remember, I did not click on the build configuration, I clicked on the main project. And I'm going to come down here to build configurations, and I'm going to say create build configuration. The name I'm going to give this is deploy Photon servers, which will be responsible for deploying the Photon servers. I'm going to hit create. I'm going to attach it to MMO Bitbucket as far as the VCS route. Then I'm going to actually, before I go and do anything else, I'm going to go over to dependencies, and I'm going to go ahead and add a snapshot dependency to build and test. So what am I doing here? Well, I'm instructing every time that I run the deploy Photon, I want the build server to run build and test, which will run a compilation for our entire system and do its testing. Now you might recall that the build script is set up in such a way to depend on the build solution target, but that's not going to really be it's not going to really make a difference if we perform a build twice, because of the way the intermediate builds happen. They're not clean builds, they're intermediate builds. They'll be pretty fast, so we don't really care about that so much. We do care, however, that we can only deploy our Photon application if our tests have ran. So again, we haven't configured our tests yet, but once we do, we only want to be able to deploy things once we successfully test. So that's why we're creating the dependency on this. Okay, so that next up, I'm going to go up to build steps, and I'm going to say add a build step. Actually, where is that? Ooh, I never attached the VCS route. Let's attach the VCS route. Let's choose MMO Bitbucket, and let's click attach. I forgot to hit the attach button. Now let's go to build steps, and let's click auto detect build steps, which will pre-configure a nice little MS build for us. Unfortunately, okay, so it's not letting me use, oh, there it is. Okay, sweet. So I want to go ahead and select the one that's going to invoke buzzmmo build.proj. And I have that build step. But we're not done yet. Inside of the build step, I'm going to have to provide a couple changes. I'm going to have to change the MS Build version to .NET Framework 4.5. Then I want to also change the target, because the target that we want is actually going to be called deploy Photon, not build solution. And the default in this case would be build solution. So let's go ahead and jump back into our VM, or sorry, our TeamCity, and change the target to deploy Photon. And that's it. Let's go ahead and hit save. But again, we're not done yet. We still have to go into our parameters and actually set up the environment variables. What I'm going to do actually instead, though, is I am going to use the project parameters as opposed to the build configuration parameters. So I'm going to go into the build and test, and I'm going to remove the env equals prod parameter here. I'm just going to say delete. So now our build solution is no longer executing against a production build. But if I come back here to the root of the project, I can set all my parameters up. And remember, there's going to be a couple parameters that I need now. I need to set my env parameter, and I also need to set up my location for Photon parameter. So let's say add new parameter, and I'm going to say env.env, and I'm going to, oh, come on, env.env value equals prod. Go ahead and save that out. Now I have one environment variable, but I also need another environment variable, and that is going to be our Photon deploy folder. We need to know where to deploy that to. So let's come back into TeamCity. Let's add a new parameter. Let's say env.photon deploy folder. And let's set it to our C software. Oh, whoops, I accidentally launched SpeedFan for some reason. C software Photon-3-4-2. Photon-3-4 or 22, sorry. /deploy. And that is the deploy folder of our Photon installation on this computer. Let's go ahead and hit save. And I think that should really be about it. So what we can do now is we can go and jump back into projects, and now we see we have two build configurations, build and test and deploy Photon servers. Let's run our deploy Photon servers. I'm going to hit the run button. Immediately, you'll notice that we queue up a build and test. The build and test is pretty much going to run almost instantaneously because there haven't been any code changes. In fact, I bet deploy Photon servers is already running right now. Just the view hasn't refreshed yet. So we'll see that in a moment here after our build and test successfully compiles. Now it has. So now we see that deploy Photon servers is doing its thing. It's saying repository sources transferred, resolve project references, blah, blah, blah. And we get an exit code. So let's go ahead and take a look at our build log. Make sure we're on the tree view. And we see that system.unauthorized exception, file name redirection.config. So what's going on here? Well, remember MS Deploy? MS Deploy is going to require that we have access to the redirection.config file, but who do we give access to is the question. Well, if you recall, our TeamCity build agent is being ran under the TeamCity identity. So we have to make sure that this file can be accessed by the TeamCity identity for it to use MS Deploy to do a local build like this. I think it's very unfortunate that bits of IIS have been baked into MS Build, otherwise it would be a very nice tool to work with in cases where you're not dealing with IIS stuff, but it's easy enough to fix. All we have to do is we have to add redirection.config to be accessible by our TeamCity user. So I'm going to jump back into the virtual machine. I'm going to go into Computer, C, Windows, System 32, iNet serve, and then I'm going to open up the config folder, which is going to let me in. And then on this redirection.config, I need to go to Properties, Security, and then I need to go and hit Edit. Let's remove this account unknown guy. And then I'm going to hit Add, and I'm going to type in TeamCity. And I'm going to give him read and execute permissions to this file. Now that I've done that, let's come back here and let's run again. So another way that we can run this is just by clicking the run button up at the upper top. Notice that this view is, so notice these different views. We have our dashboard view, we have our project view, and then we have our configuration view. So let's go ahead and click run inside of our configuration view, and we'll see that we do indeed have one queued. And our repository sources have been transferred, and now we're running. And did we fail? We failed. Cannot read configuration file. Blah, blah, blah. Pretty sure I gave it access to TeamCity. I gave it read and write. Let's do one quick little bit of debugging. I'm going to give everyone read and write on this, just temporarily. And what I'm doing here is I'm verifying that the issue isn't caused by the particular user that's logged in, which might be the case. I'm verifying that the issue might be something slightly different. So just a quick So we still get an unauthorized exception. So let's go ahead and make sure to remove that everyone. I'm also going to remove TeamCity, and I'm going to remove everyone. And I'm just going to give TeamCity read access to this whole folder. So I'm going to back up to inetserv, open up config, go to properties. See, remember how I had to do that with our deploy user? Well, I'm going to go ahead and do this with TeamCity now too. Hit run again. Wait a year and a half. Maybe longer. And we get success. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the build log. What do we have? We have step 1 MS build, deploy Photon. We have 2 execs. One exec deployed the master server, 7 updated. And the other one deployed the region server, 28 added. It looks like I never added the proper Photon assemblies to this server, or they may have made their way already. But regardless, we now have a two successful builds. So yeah, so what does that mean? So our deploy Photon servers, what that'll do is that'll copy or synchronize those directories into that folder that we specified. And if we come in here and look at these folders, we see that they are indeed full of cool stuff. Alrighty. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and fire up Photon. I'm going to come into my services, and I'm going to click Start on Photon Socket Server. And wait even longer. You guys know that progress bar is actually completely fake, by the way. Windows cannot start Photon Socket Server, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's check out its logs. I'm going to go into bin win64 log. I'm going to open up the Photon default log. And I'm going to see what went wrong. What went wrong here? Destroying, shutting down. Started. Value assembly does not exist. Ooh, I never specified the assembly of my region server. So let's go ahead and specify that as buzzmmo server.region. Save that file out, jump back in services, hit start. Wait forever. Again, that progress bar right there is completely fake. It's just sitting there for an arbitrary amount of seconds to make it look like it's doing something, when in reality it's just failing all over the place, apparently. Let's check out our logs again. Destroying, error, license. Application doesn't exist, light. Okay, so it seems I have a reference to light somewhere in my application. I think it might actually be, okay, so it's our WebSocket listeners have an override application attribute set to light. I'm just going to remove that parameter entirely. Then I'm going to go back into services, hit start once again. Doesn't work. But why doesn't it work? Well, it doesn't work because... Isn't this game fun? Intent was made to access in a way forbidden by its access permissions. Server shutting it down. Well, that's bizarre. I wonder why it would do that. Well, honestly, it's not that too big of a deal. That's that port that is trying to put a listener on for the WebSockets. Is irrelevant because we're not using WebSockets yet anyway. So I'm just going to go ahead and comment out WebSockets. We will cross that bridge when we come to it. And I'm making an words and hey, wow, it worked. Okay, so Photon is now started up on our computer. So let's go ahead and test Photon and see what happens. So to test it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to open up the port 5055 for this computer, and then I'm going to fire up that little test script that we had written in Unity, and I'm going to use it to connect to this machine. So let's go ahead and hit start and type in firewall, and go to inbound rules, say new rule, say port 5055 over UDP, allow Photon. All right, we're going to go ahead and allow that port, and now we're going to go ahead and fire up Unity. And I'm going to open up Unity client, which brings Unity up here. And I'm going to go ahead and open up test Photon in Visual Studio eventually. Maybe. Yeah, I'll pause the video while we do this. All right, now that Visual Studio is started up, let's go ahead and change my peer connect line. We're going to be having this be switched on what environment we're in later when we write real client code. Again, this code is here just to test that we can connect to our region server and our master server. So I'm going to change the IP address to whatever it is the IP address of my VM is, which I always forget. It's 2138. 192.168.2138. I'm going to jump back into Unity. And then we're on the untitled scene. So the last time that we made this scene, we didn't save it. I'm not going to save it here either, but I will just temporarily add the test Photon component to our camera. And then I'm going to hit run. And we connect to one of them, but we don't connect to the other one. Now, the reason I think why we don't connect to the other one would be made a little bit more apparent once I open back up this code in Visual Studio and come back here to onEvent. I'm going to say debug.log.event : and I'll say event data.parameters 0.toString. Or I don't even need to do the toString because that's implicit. So I'm just going to log out the message that we got from the master server. So I'm going to hit play. All right, see what we got? We got blank back. We got blank back because if we look closely at our configuration of our master server, you'll notice that I have a override for the region servers in my app debug Nelson config, but I do not have an override for my app release.config. Since this project is being built as a release build, it's going to use this config transform, and because it's using this config transform, it's not going to have a value set for its region servers. And remember, the value that it uses for its region servers is what it sends to the client. So let's go ahead and fix that. First of all, I'm going to delete these really obnoxious comments up here. I hate those. Then I'm going to go ahead and say app settings, add, I'm going to say key equals region servers, value equals 192.168.2138. So that's our region server that we're going to connect to. And I'll say xdt transform equals set attributes. And then say xdt locator, or xdt locator equals match on key. So this will set up the proper configuration value for our release environment. Now you might be wondering why we're doing this inside the source that we are committing to our repository. That brings a that gets into a big discussion about where configuration values should live, what different kinds of configuration values do you have, under what circumstances do they change, and under what circumstances would you want to support them changing in. I have considered a lot of different options, and this is the solution I came up with. I think that this gives us the simplest path to move forward. We can change the way that we work with configuration down the road. But right now, I think I'm pretty happy with just having our region servers be known and configured by our master server. At one point, once we actually write our region server and master server, we'll have the region servers register themselves with the master server. But until then, we'll just leave it like this. Anyway, so I made the change to my configuration. What do I do now? Well, I have to go and commit my code, because otherwise the TeamCity will not know that I've changed code or changed the code and will not be able to recompile with the new changes. So I need to take all my working copy changes, and notice that we have these Unity temp files being added. I don't like that. These should be ignored. Let's go ahead and ignore these real fast. I'm going to right-click one of these guys, and I'm going to say Show and Explore, just as a cheap way to get into this folder. And I'm going to open up my gitignore file. And I'm also going to open up my Unity client temp folder, and I'm going to delete everything inside of it. You'll see why that's important here soon. Oh, well, except for my Unity log file, of course. I should not have done that while Unity was running. Derp. I'm usually not this stupid. Let's go ahead and skip. Yeah, I'm going to close out Unity while I do this. I'm not going to save this scene. Okay, now I'm going to go into client, and temp is not there. Oh yeah, because temp is destroyed when Unity stops running. Okay, but I do want to make sure it's still ignored. So I want to say Unity /client/temp Unity editor temp. I want to make sure that those two are ignored in case somebody decides to do a commit while they're still running Unity. So that's just a slight oversight that I had with my gitignore file. Anyway, now that I've done that, we see everything here has changed, and we can go ahead and stage these files. I'm going to commit them. So I'm going to say commit, and then I'm going to say fixed region server config. Then I'm going to say push commits immediately to origin, and I'm going to say commit. Now let's jump into TeamCity. Hit run on our deploy Photon server, and wait a couple seconds. See, this whole process of coming in here, doing a commit, pushing it up to our master, and then coming into TeamCity and hitting this button called run, this is the epitome of what we've been trying to do. Because what we're seeing right here in TeamCity isn't a development environment. This is the real production environment. This would be the real workflow that you would do in order to push real changes up to a live application. Of course, you would implement like QA procedures, you might implement multiple branches, you might do a little bit more complex stuff, but this is the simplest, most pure form of effectively what a real deployment situation is, a real deployment environment. Anyway, so now that we've done that, we see that my change did make its way into TeamCity, and that we've built successfully. Because we built successfully, we should just be able to launch Unity, add that script to our camera, and then hit play, and we should see the proper messages. So I'm going to click on camera, I'm going to drag over test Photon, and I'm going to hit play. And look at that. So we only got one connect. That's weird. We got this event, so we know we connected to the master server. But you'll notice that we only got one status change connect. We didn't get two status change connects. Let's look at why that could be. Peer.connect. Changed. Passing in this, passing in this. Is that just a bug in the way that debug logs are working? No, we still only get one connect and one disconnect. So it doesn't look like... Oh, derp. derp, 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 derp. We forgot to specify, or I forgot to specify the port on the region server, 5055. All right, let's go ahead and commit our changes. Commit. Push, commit, and run. Yeah, I know when I started doing this, especially when I started working with Git, and then I started doing continuous integration, one of the things that kept on running through my mind was like, wow, there's so many steps. I have to stage the files, I have to commit them, I have to push them, then I have to go back into TeamCity, I have to hit run, I have to wait for it to build, then I have to wait for it to deploy. But see, here's the good thing about that. It's that much work, whether you're deploying a change to a staging environment somewhere within your organization, or you're publishing your change into an entire web farm of servers that handle some sort of global service. The point is yes, it's a little bit more of a pain sometimes, but the chances of messing things up is incredibly decreased. Furthermore, once we actually have this game live and we have people playing it, I have to do this one process just to get the change done for everybody. Okay, got event 192.168. So we got our region connect event, we connected to our master server, and we connected to our region server. So we are now successfully connecting to our servers. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps this video up. We can now deploy Photon and we can build. Next up, we're going to be looking at how we can automate our deployment of our website, client, and launcher. We'll see you guys in the next video.